Look, I'm running against Dan Donovan, but the truth is, he's not the only one doing a lousy job. Mayor de Blasio acts like Staten Island doesn't even exist. And we need to get rid of all the leadership in D.C., Republican and Democrat. Now, saying that won't do much for me with the establishment, but look around. The traffic, the drugs. What's the establishment doing for you? I'm Max Rose, and I approve this message because it's not just Donovan. They all gotta go.
New York's 11th U.S. congressional district, made up mostly by the borough of Staten Island and some of southern Brooklyn, is New York City's only Republican-held district and the only part of the city to cast more ballots for Donald Trump in the 2016 election than Hillary Clinton, despite registered Democrats outnumbering Republicans there almost 2-1. Joining us now is the candidate you saw there looking to take over the seat in Trump's New York City stronghold, a United States Army veteran who served in Afghanistan, Democrat Max Rose. He earned a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for his service. Max, great to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. So you're in a pretty tight race there against an incumbent. The latest New York Times Siena poll has Dan Donovan, the Republican incumbent, at 44% and you at 40%,
Yep.
within the margin of error, effectively. What's your message? We saw a piece of it there to Republicans and to Democrats who vote Republican out in Staten Island.
Sure, of course. Well, first of all, I trust these polls about as far as I can throw them. All right, and I think
so you don't. So do you believe it's closer or less close?
I know it's close, but it's been close for a long time. And irrespective of what any poll says, if you're looking at a poll right now and then rejiggering your message accordingly or your strategy accordingly, I think you're not only running an ineffective campaign, but you're also running a campaign that's not ethical. The purpose of this is to build trust. And we've been running now for 15 months. And it's been a very consistent message throughout, and it's been a truthful one, which is that the people of my district and districts like it throughout the country have been failed by both parties. They've been failed by an entire political class that takes a ton of corporate PAC money, a ton of lobbyist money, and lies, quite frankly, or very frequently. Doesn't do anything about infrastructure, nothing about the opioid epidemic, nothing about gun violence. So it's not just a matter of what we're saying. It's a matter of also what we're doing. I'm not taking a cent from corporate PACs. I'm not taking a cent from federal lobbyists, one of the earlier candidates in the country to do that as well. And as a consequence, you know, what we're seeing over the course of the next few days is more of the same, not something new.
So President Trump, popular on Staten Island, that the borough went for Trump in 2016. He's done some things I want to ask you about just in the last few days as a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. He says he's going to send 5,000 troops to the United States border to stop this caravan, as he calls it. And yesterday said he might send 15,000 troops, which would be about equal to or a little more than the troop force we have in Afghanistan right now. Is that a good idea?
No. So, first off, I am very much in favor and for strong borders. I'm for a sound and effective asylum policy, one that involves our courts being, adequately funded. But with that being said, think about it this way, right? 5,000 soldiers is double what we have in Iraq and Syria right now. If we have to send 5,000 soldiers to the borders, and keep in mind, they cannot legally do anything in regards to domestic law enforcement. Right. If we have to send 5,000 soldiers there, then that basically means that we don't have strong borders. We have to fund our borders. That's what's most important here, not something temporary. This is a political stunt through and through, and it's just to grab people's attention prior to an election. We should call it for what it is, a political stunt.
Do you think it's disrespectful to those troops to use them as a political ploy?
It's not a question of whether it's disrespectful or not. It's a question of whether it is an effective use of our resources. We already have a military that is overstretched. Let's actually focus on real national security policies. That's what should matter here, not politics.
Imagine the logistical nightmare and the costs of moving 5,000 troops to the border. I mean, it's tough enough to move a platoon.
Right.
But let's go to Staten Island.
Okay.
So you walk around Staten Island. Are they talking about troops at the border? Or are they talking about their health care plans and how long it takes them to drive to work across the bridge? What are they talking about?
So, running for office is not an episode of The West Wing. All right, I knock on doors, I go to the ferry, I go to the subways, and I've never had knocked on someone's door and said, well, look, man, I've got 45 minutes to talk to you, or look, I want to talk, I'm a self-identified Donald Trump supporter. What they do talk about is their deep frustration with the failure of government. People have 2-hour commutes on Staten Island, some of the longest commuting times of anyone in the country. We've lost hundreds of people to overdoses. Kids are afraid to go to school, afraid of gun violence. That's what they are so frustrated by, and they're tired of just hearing these bullet points in regular campaigns during get out the vote strategies and then being ignored thereafter. They really want to see politics change in this country. And the reason why I'm running is because of those frustrations, but also because 6 years ago, my vehicle hit a bomb in Afghanistan. I was medevac to Kandahar Air Force Base, and a 2-star general tells me, son, 5 years ago you'd be dead. The only reason why I lived is because Congress allocated a couple $100 million to put armor underneath my vehicle and vehicles just like it. They did that in a bipartisan manner, in a quiet manner. They didn't care, no disrespect to you all, they didn't care about MSNBC or Fox or tweeting or their donors. They just solved a problem. People in my district, God bless them, want that to be the story of this country, and I believe it can be for much larger problems.
So, Max, Nancy Pelosi could take the gavel back in a couple of months. She has said that the Democratic caucus can't just investigate everything, can't just pass statements of principle that have no hope of getting through the Senate, much less to the president's desk. They want to do some bipartisan compromise legislation, even at the risk of making Donald Trump a successful president, well positioning him for 2020. Well, you're going to support him or support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker?
Yeah,
and do you support that strategy?
So let's take a step back, okay? I am not supporting Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. I do not believe that she will be the Speaker. There's many candidates across the country that are echoing my sentiments. But after the Republicans took back Congress in 2010, Mitch McConnell stood up and he said, our #1 objective is to make sure that President Obama does not win re-election. That was not only wrong, that was un-American. And I refuse to be that type of elected official. When you think about the things that Donald Trump ran on, if you put the racist stuff aside for a moment, he basically co-opted a Democratic populist agenda. Infrastructure, draining the swamp, fair taxation. He said, I was greedy for myself, now I'll be greedy for you. If the president actually wants to start working on those things, rather than just talking about them during election season, I'll be the first to raise my hand. What I will not do, what I refuse to do, what I don't think the patriotic thing to do is in 2019 to start just thinking about 2020 and the presidential election and my re-election. That's wrong because, once again, we'll be ignoring people's problems in districts just like mine.
Max Rose in a tight race in New York's 11th district, challenging the Republican incumbent. Thanks for being here today, and thanks for the years you've given the country. We appreciate it.
Oh, this was a real honor.
By the way, Morning Joe has reached out to Max's opponent, Republican Congressman Dan Donovan. We're hoping to schedule him for an interview before Election Day. Coming up next on Morning Joe, two very different messages in the waning days of the midterm race.
So let's stand together against politicians who use race to divide us. So let's stand together against rhetoric that pits us against them. As governor, I'll ensure that the most diverse state in America also sets an example as the most united state in America.
He says he wants to apply for pardon for the felony he committed. Attempt of murder.
We'll talk to the Democratic nominee for governor in Florida, Mayor Andrew Gillum, who was on the receiving end of a lock him up chant last night at the president's rally. Morning Joe's coming right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.